there's kind of two potential problems with Roundup Ready sugar beets. One is pending legislation banning GM crops in certain areas. Another thing is the fact that we are expecting to see glyphosate-resistant weeds emerging, which would make the Roundup Ready technology less useful. So we expect if that were to happen, producers may start to shift towards other crops because, again, the lack of labor as well as the higher cost herbicide programs required of conventional sugar beets. And there's probably a couple different ways that could happen as they slowly transition towards other crops, or there, in the last year or two, been a real concern with a lack of seed available for conventional sugar beets. Most seed producers have been preparing a lot of GM seeds and not a lot of conventional sugar beet stocks on hand. So if in fact there were a ban of GM sugar beets, we may not have seeds available. So we also modeled what producers could do if there were no sugar beets available to them in their rotations at all. We allowed them to choose from some of the most common crops for Wyoming. We have corn, we have wheat, we have dry beans, and we have alfalfa. And if Roundup Ready sugar beets weren't available, but conventional sugar beets were, the whole farm on average lost about 5% of their profitability in average years. However, if no sugar beets were available, profitability goes down by about 18%. So that's a pretty big hit. And that's even allowing some eases on the corn restrictions. In the original model, we don't allow corn on corn. So we have basically corn, some other crop before you can go back into corn. When we eliminate sugar beets from the rotation, we actually allow them to go 2 years of corn before they have to rotate away. So corn's one of the more profitable crops potentially for our region. And so we assume that producers, if there are no sugar beets around, are going to grow corn more than probably the agronomist would desire them to do. This research, I think, is important to producers because it helps them make planning decisions, again, short-term and long-term. This research was really driven by the fact that GM sugar beets and all GM crops may be regulated in the near term. If not, there's pending legislation, of course, we all seen in California recently, of mandating that food be labeled as GM, and we don't know what that's going to do to the demand for GM crops. So to understand what the trade-offs are to go back to a conventional sugar beet in terms of a GM sugar beet is important to producers. I think it's also important in the fact that we can start to see the trade-offs that happen. Right? I mean, a lot of producers want to grow corn on corn, and our model suggests there's the potential for some high profit years, but you also leave money on the table by doing that. So diversification is key, and I think our model can help show that diversification. And we can analyze scenarios that we haven't seen in the past. We can do some forecasts and say what ifs, right? What if corn price goes up and wheat goes down, or vice versa? We can analyze that on paper before producers actually make a planting decision.